Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everybody. I'm joined today by former supervisory special agent with the FBI, Doug Kouns, and together with Doug, today we'll talk about the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the activist who was shot in Utah last month. This is an event that doesn't need any explanation because it happened very recently. It was very big in the news, and of course, everybody knows what happened. Thanks for your time, Doug. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
You're today the CEO of your investigation firm called Veracity. Do you want to say something to my viewers about yourself, who you are, whatever you feel is relevant for this conversation that we're going to have?
Sure. So I was an FBI agent and later supervisory FBI agent for about a little over 22 years, and retired in 2018 and started a private investigation and security consulting business called Veracity. And I've got a team of mostly retired FBI agents, some other federal agencies, some state and local officers, and intelligence analysts. And we mostly work for attorneys and businesses, depending on what they need.
Yeah, and you were also featured many times in the news in the last month to talk about this case. So let me get to it by asking you something that I've been wondering all along. So when I heard what happened and I saw what happened, my first thought was something very similar happened last year with President Donald Trump, who was candidate back then, in Pennsylvania. So my first question is, what went wrong with security? How could someone climb on a roof and shoot someone who's giving a speech in front of his audience like that?
Well, they're similar, but they're really very different. You know, with President Trump, or back then it was former President Trump, he is, having been an actual politician and president of the United States, is still afforded an actual Secret Service detail, and it's a much more robust type thing. That said, you know, the shooter still found a gap, and with the Secret Service, and I have one on my team, a former agent. It was very surprising to me because I know how good they are. I'm not sure exactly where the breakdown in communication happened, but for a shooter, which didn't seem really very skilled, you know, not a professional by any means, to be able to make it to a vantage point to where they got a shot off, you know, very nearly got him, was very surprising to me. But I know how they work. The president has his own security detail that's with him wherever he goes. That's the inner perimeter. It's like a three-tiered approach. So they've got the inner perimeter. The next perimeter is local Secret Service agents from wherever he's going. Are generally responsible along with a local contingent. And then the outer perimeter is more state and local officials that are detailed to assist the Secret Service on these assignments. Now with Charlie Kirk, you know, I'm speculating a little bit here, but he's not an actual politician. He's not an elected official. He's not afforded an active law enforcement security detail. So he's probably hired a company like maybe similar to ours that has retired agents and Secret Service agents and whatnot to follow him around to coordinate with the local authorities, in his case, probably the university police and maybe the local police, but somebody has to pay them. They're probably off duty. You know, I'm not sure exactly what the arrangement is between a private person's personal security and the official law enforcement presence. So, but certainly it's not going to be as much as an actual elected official, certainly not as much as the president of the United States. So hindsight being 2020, they were woefully inadequately resourced for that security operation. They had over 3,000 people, and it's my understanding they only had about 6 officers doing security. They didn't have magnetometers for, you know, checking people with weapons coming in. They didn't have any drones. They didn't have any counter snipers, you know, also in elevated positions. I'm going to guess that they didn't have any advanced detail. And I'm maybe getting ahead of you here, but an advanced detail is usually when a high profile politician, say the president, is going somewhere, the Secret Service will send out a team in advance, and they will kind of think of it as if they are the shooter. Where would I go? Where would I hide? And they, being law enforcement, have the power to lock access to rooftops, to weld shut manhole covers, to basically mitigate or eliminate any potential threats that they might encounter there. And these outdoor venues are just tough. There's no real access control. A person that has their mindset on doing something like this may very likely succeed.
Well, you mentioned this mindset, and I think that what is very interesting is that the cartridges found on the scene, especially the ones still in the rifle, had engraved writings on them, which were pretty much nonsense because it was just probably leftist words, but actually those sentences don't really add up. The only thing that I can think of that makes some sense is Bella Ciao. I was mentioning the very famous Italian popular song. But what does the fact that he has those writings engraved on cartridges tell us about his mindset in his opinion, in your opinion?
Well, clearly, and I'm not a psychological profiler. There are those in the FBI that do that, but we have a little bit of training. We've worked with them before. Clearly, he expected them to be found. Otherwise, why bother? Making a statement, probably political. I don't think they've ever released an official motive, so to speak. But everybody knows who was targeted and what he stands for. So, the anti-fascist, that Ciao Bella is supposedly from an anti-fascist song from Italy. Probably during World War II would be my guess, is where that
Yes,
song
that's correct.
came about.
Yes.
Yeah, and as well as like "Hey Fascist," catch, um, so this is a person against, Charlie Kirk's ideology, um, intended to be found, make a statement. He wasn't just trying to eliminate a person; he was trying to appeal to a broader audience, I guess. That's the only thing I would think.
Well, to be honest with you, before asking you this question, I didn't think of the fact that he expected those cartridges to be found because I've been covering American crime for a while now, and I think that killers trying to actually leave messages to the police are very rare. This can be one of these cases. Of course, I trust your judgment, but if I think back, people trying to communicate like this with the police would be the DC Sniper, Son of Sam, Zodiac, and probably that's it in America, because the other only case that comes to my mind right now would be probably Jack the Ripper. So I'm not saying that it never happens, but I think that it's very rare. Probably you're correct, and this is one of those cases.
Right. And who knows if he intended to do more of this in the future, and that was going to be his kind of call sign, but they caught him fairly quickly. Um, or if it was a one and done kind of thing. The conspiracy theorists, think it's staged and meant to rile up each side and cause civil war. Who knows, what crazy things come out. I try not to look at the social media, but I do from time to time, and I kind of shake my head in disbelief the things that people come up with. I think just a kid trying to make a statement somehow had become radicalized. So when you're investigating these things, someone in my position, and you find something significant like that, when you execute the search warrants and you're going through the phone and the computers and communications, you're looking for those things. So you've got Ciao Bella on the cartridge. Most likely I'm going to figure out where he found that, somewhere on one of his electronic devices. That he probably didn't, he's not old enough to have known about that without doing some sort of internet research. So, in those search warrants, they get those electronic devices, the phones, they extract all that data and look for those clues. Was he working with anybody else? How did he become radicalized? Because from what I understand, his family is a very conservative um, type situation. More of a Republican values.
Well, but in a case like this, how difficult is it to identify the shooter? I don't want to play the Monday morning quarterback here, but in the first moments after the shooting, two men were arrested and later they were released. Is it because the FBI gets flooded with information in the first phases, therefore it's hard to sift through them?
Oh Lord, when something like this happens, you get a wave of tips and calls, and we have I don't know how they were dealing with it there because I'm not sure how quickly the FBI got involved, but um, the bureau has a way of dealing with this, and so you have the people that take the phone calls, and you get a lot of just worthless, crazy things that just get pitched. But anything that has any little bit of credibility to it has to be checked out by an investigator. And there's often hundreds, if not thousands, of these things, and your resources are limited. So you try to prioritize. Okay, these are the ones that look really good. We're going to address these first. These are just okay. We're going to get these next. These are weak, but we still need to look at them. So you just methodically work through those until you find that needle in the haystack. And they got a couple of they had a couple of what we would call detentions, but not arrests. So you can detain somebody temporarily while you figure out whether or not they're actually the person that you're looking for. So yes, they detained a couple of people early on that turned out not to be the shooters. And then as that information keeps rolling in and you filter and process and analyze, you kind of focus in on who may really be the killer. And I think although his parents ultimately turned him in, it was a matter of time before they caught him anyway. It seemed like they had a lot of very strong clues as to who they were looking for.
Well, since you mentioned getting to him, the manhunt was pretty peculiar because when I saw the pictures of the guy wearing a t-shirt with the American flag, because of course he needed to blend in the crowd there, and with his sunglasses, I thought that this is going to be another long manhunt, such as Luigi Mangione or the Unabomber or Andrew Cunanan, but nothing of the sort happened. This was actually pretty quick because he turned himself in. And while this is pretty something that can happen, what puzzles me is that he was talked by his parents into surrendering because they recognized him on TV. Isn't this very strange? Because usually parents tend to fool themselves into believing that their kids are innocent or around the wrong people who brought them to do what they did. Isn't it a unique case?
It does not surprise me, actually. I've dealt with
Okay.
this situation before where we're looking for somebody. We go to their parents, and I always tell people that there's two kinds of people. There's bad people that do bad things, and there's good people that do bad things and or make a mistake or whatnot. And once you know who that is, you appeal to the parents. If there's any way you can reach him and bring him into us, we can help ensure his safety. Because if we just catch him on the street or in a hotel room or in a car somewhere, we can't guarantee his safety. You don't know if he's going to come out with the gun or the whole, you've heard of the suicide by cop. He's not going to go down, he's not going to go to jail. So he comes out and points a gun knowing he's going to get shot. We don't want that to happen. So you appeal to their love for their child that, if you want this, if you want him to be brought in safely and unhurt, the best chance for that is for you to get him to come in and surrender. And if you can appeal to that, the parents are sometimes cooperative. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's like you said, they don't believe it. And they don't want to help you. Sometimes it depends on the family. That's where they got this attitude from, and they're sure as heck not going to help you. But in this case, it worked out. So
But also, I think that parents try to shield themselves. Like, it's very hard to accept that your son is a killer. So you prefer
exactly.
thinking that something wrong happened and that there was nothing wrong with his upbringing. So I think that this is what happens because, for instance, if you read books by the mothers of terrorists, the first case that comes to my mind right now would be Zacarias Moussaoui, the alleged 20th hijacker of 9/11, which actually was not the 20th hijacker, but a replacement for one of the pilots. And his mother said something along the lines of, my son is a good guy who was around the wrong folks. So this is why I find this case surprising. But of course, you know more than me. And if you say it's not that special, probably, I mean, not probably, but surely you're right and I'm wrong.
Well, no,
That ha-
no, it's just it's not a right or wrong. It's just every situation's a little bit different, and even if they do believe their child's innocent, if you can appeal to that, let's bring him in safely first, and then we'll sort all this out later. If he didn't do it, we will figure that out, and you can help us do that. Um, it's not like television where I don't know if you watch American television where the
Never.
interrogators are pounding on, tell us where he is right now, or it's not like that. It's more of a cooperative spirit. You try to be sympathetic to what they're going through, and it's not that you're manipulating or using them, but it's just true. If you want them to come in safely, it's better if you help us. If you can somehow reach him and plead to him, meet us here, and we can guarantee that you're not going to be hurt, that you'll be treated fairly, you'll have your day in court.
Well, what do we know about his motives? Because at first glance, you would say this guy's a leftist who tried. He didn't try. He who killed someone who was very close to the right wing. But actually, it seems based on his social media that he had no political belonging at all.
Yeah, that's kind of a mystery still right now, and I did a little research before we started this podcast to make sure that there wasn't something new that I had missed. But still both sides are blaming the other. They're saying he's a leftist. They're saying no, he's a MAGA. But we don't really know is the answer. The fact that he was targeting a right wing MAGA type would indicate that he is the opposite of that. But like you said, there's anomalies in this whole situation that don't fully support that. So I think we just have to wait and see. As an investigator, I became disciplined enough to not let personal opinions cloud my investigating. Jumping to a conclusion and then making your investigation fit that preconceived notion of here's what's going on. I just need to support this thought. You let the facts, the evidence speak for itself and guide your investigation as opposed to you guiding the investigation.
Also, because I see both in America and in Italy that everything gets political. So in this case, as you mentioned, everyone is blaming the other side. But I think that rejection of violence should be bipartisan because madness knows no political side. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think both sides should immediately condemn these things. And I think we also need to quit immediately blaming the other side and escalating the rhetoric and fueling these flames of violence. If I have I don't like to get political on these things, but if I have a criticism, it's that the current administration seem to be quick to point the fingers at the left for this thing. And we need the opposite of this. We need level heads. We need to let the investigators do their thing. We need to let them say that this is what happened and this is why, and not point the fingers so quickly at each other. The rhetoric just gets horrible. People calling for civil war. There's going to be consequences for this. You got one of ours, we're going to get one of yours, and it's very discouraging.
Yeah, I know. A few days ago, President Trump said that he hates his opponents. And whether you like him or dislike him, or don't want to get this political, I think that saying that you hate somebody else is always something a little bit far-fetched. Also, in this point in history where hate seems to be a little bit too much widespread, and we should all calm down, probably on both sides of the discussion.
Exactly. And that needs to come from the top. That example needs to come from the top to say, hey, this is not acceptable. We need to cool off and bring the temperature down.
Well, from an investigation standpoint, what kind of useful information can the police and the FBI take from, like, searching his house or searching his computer and his social media? I mean, of course, of the attacker.
Yeah, we touched on that a little bit, but those things are great resources, wealth of information. Typically, I'm old enough that when I started the FBI, we didn't all have our phones with everything that we do and everything that we talk to on them. Nowadays, when you arrest somebody and you get your phone, you can extract all that data. You can see everybody that they've talked to over the past for years. Actually, that they hold so much data, and you can see their texts, you can see their browser histories, you can look at their bank account. It's all on your phone. And if it's not on your phone, it's on your computer. And sometimes it takes a subpoena, a court order of some sort to get all of it, but it's all there. So it takes a little time, usually a month or so to get any kind of bank records back, or text messages. Sometimes you can see who was texted, but you don't know what they were saying. So you have to get a court order to that, Verizon or T-Mobile or whoever it is, and you can get those texts and you can find out, was anybody else involved? How did this person go from seemingly a normal college student to a radicalized person that could commit murder, coming from what seems like a good family? There's a lot of why questions right now. The weapon, where did the weapon come from? Where did he learn how to shoot it? It wasn't a special sniper rifle. I think it was just a hunting type rifle, a Mauser 30-06, which is not typically what a sniper would use. Was the shot, was it a miss? Was he aiming for the head? And I think it hit him in the chest, and the fragments came up and got him, is what killed him. But it wasn't a long shot either. So there's just a lot of information that can be gleaned. Did he used to go to a shooting range to practice? If so, where did the people there talk to him? What did he say? How did he act? Videos, the people that were in the crowd, a lot of the witnesses have videos, and there's security cameras everywhere. There's Ring doorbell cameras on so many houses, and these are all things that we didn't have when I was a young agent. And investigators have all these resources to use, and so it doesn't surprise me at all that these people typically get caught a lot more quickly now than they used to. And there's so much evidence out there to gather that will support an ultimate conviction. If it goes to trial, my guess is he will plead guilty to some sort of charge in return for a more lenient sentence.
Of course, building a case against him is going to be very easy.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. It seems like it. Yeah, you say that, but we don't know for sure. There are very good defense attorneys. There's things called suppression hearings where the very good evidence that you think you're going to be able to use gets thrown out because it wasn't obtained legally. And there's so many things to still do and worry about. But I would expect they were talking about the death penalty for this. I would expect his attorneys to probably, this is all speculation I don't have any insider info. My guess is they will plead guilty to something in return for taking the death penalty away.
that definitely makes sense. And what long-term effects do you see? Because, of course, I think that at least security is going to be ramped up, also for activists. But what else in terms of politics or even freedom of speech?
Well, you're right, for sure. At these events, I think you'll see fewer outdoor events. They're just a nightmare to lock down and keep secure. The events that you do have will be more difficult to get into. There will be more strict screening. Um, and as far as like the bigger picture, really, I see this getting worse before it gets better. That's just, again, my personal opinion. I think the political climate here in the United States is very polarized, um, a very us against them atmosphere. And I always just think when I read these things, it's not an us against them. We're all just us. And you've got your right extreme, your left extreme, but most of us are right here. We're your coworkers, we're your neighbors. We're not this stereotype radical left or far right extremist. That's kind of what we picture, but that's not reality. We're all kind of the same, and our ideologic and political differences are really not as big as we think they are.
Well, Doug, I love your ending and your final words because everyone should calm down this period and understand that we're not enemies to each other. We are,
Exactly.
well, I'm not American, but both in Italy and in the US, we should understand that we are a country, first off. We are
Right.
also
I'm sure.
allies because we're NATO. We are the West. So before thinking of this us against them thing, we should get together and be like one. Totally agree.
Exactly.
I love
Exactly.
your commentary. Well, Doug, many thanks for your time again and for giving us this very precious explanation about something that was so big in the news last month and that, of course, is gonna have longer term effects as you just described.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks everybody for watching this video, and I'll see you all in my next episode. Bye bye.